If there's one thing that us high achiever girlies can't seem to stay away from, it's burnout. And I think it's really important to be honest, because over the past few months, I've noticed myself slipping down the slippery slopes towards the deep dark pits of
feeling like I'd spread myself way too thin.
Work has been pretty stressful, but if there's one thing that I've learned in my first 7 months of being a doctor, it's that life is way too short to give everything to your career. But of course, I also have goals that I want to achieve. So to find out how we get balanced, we need to talk about how we get off balanced. Starting with an issue that I've struggled with, and that is seeing Netflix as the only way you can rest. I was finding that I was coming home from work, I was feeling incredibly tired and exhausted. So I was lying on the couch, I was turning on Netflix, and I felt as though I didn't have any energy to see my friends or exercise or anything other than being a couch potato. And then, of course, what happened? All my positive fitness habits slipped. I was feeling guilty about being lazy. I was feeling more stressed because I wasn't exercising. I wasn't seeing my friends because I felt too tired to make social plans. I was feeling lonely, isolated. That was making me a little bit depressed. And it just became this downward spiral of feeling more and more off balanced and tired, and then turning to binging Netflix. In any conversation about work-life balance, it's so important that we consider the 7 different types of rest. If you've never heard about what the 7 different types of rest are, then they are physical, mental, emotional, social, sensory, creative, and spiritual. In practice, this might look like going to the gym after a mentally exhausting day in work to rest your brain, but engage in physical activity, which despite being physically draining, may have a restorative effect in resting you mentally. Sensory rest could look like having a power nap, sleeping, or having a long, hot, low-lit bath as a form of resting instead of overstimulating yourself by watching Netflix whilst simultaneously scrolling on social media. Another way we often get off balanced is by blurring the boundaries, both geographically and digitally. What I mean by geographical of blurring the boundaries is bringing different states of mind to different areas. For example, doing work in bed where your bed is somewhere that you should associate with resting, not working, or scrolling on my phone at my desk. My desk should be somewhere that I associate with working, not my social life, or eating on the sofa in front of TV, which I'm really guilty of. Having different areas we associate with different tasks makes the work so much easier for our brain, because when we're in that area, we don't even need to think, we just know what we are supposed to be doing in that area. Making sure that my bedroom is for relaxing and sleeping means when I get into bed, it is so much easier for my mind to switch off and for me to get to sleep than if I was confusing my brain by occasionally working from my bed. Blurring the boundaries isn't just geographical, it can also be digital. In October, the hospital that I worked at changed digital systems, and when they changed their digital system, there was an app that I could download onto my personal phone. Now, there was a couple of weeks where one of the patients on the ward was getting progressively sicker. It was so tempting for me to download the app so that I could frequently be checking up on their observations, any updates, because I felt as though it would curb my anxiety. Or now on my new rotation, I have a work laptop which I bring home with me every day, and it can be really difficult to not open up my work laptop when I get home and just get a couple of things done before I go into work the next day. Having clear digital boundaries is key for work-life balance. Not responding to emails outside of working hours, not completing work outside of working hours, and not checking in on work when you're not being paid to. High achiever ladies, we need to have a big old sit down about the next one, and that is saying yes when you should be saying no. Not to generalize, but there is this tendency for women to become people pleasers who break their backs for everyone around them, for it to not always be reciprocated. And when it starts off, you enter a new job, this is all okay. You can maintain this level of energy for a short period of time, but long term, it's not sustainable. This is something that I definitely learned the hard way, and I have a full video on how to deal with people pleasing up here. But if you can't be bothered to watch the full video, then the punchline is not people pleasing isn't not doing anything nice for anyone ever again. Committing to not people pleasing is to ensure that you maintain a fair value exchange. Value exchange is the written or unwritten contract that exists between all human relationships. This could be employee and employer, whereby the employer pays for a service from the employee, or even in our friendships where we are expected to provide support and companionship and that be reciprocated. When we people please, we imbalance that value exchange and ultimately we lower our own value. I think the biggest realization that I had around people pleasing is that people pleasing doesn't make people respect you more. It doesn't help you succeed in your career. It doesn't mean that other people will reciprocate those acts of kindness. A lot of the time it means that you're the first person people go to when they want something done because they know that you'll say yes. Saying no is hard, especially if you've always been one of those people who always says yes. And I still have my days where I say yes to things that I should have said no to, but simply by taking action to make them fewer and far between strengthens your boundaries, makes you feel better about yourself, and enables you to practice a skill that makes saying no easier. A situation I don't think is spoken about enough when it comes to work-life balance goes a little something like this. You procrastinate, you get into a rut, you've fallen out of love of whatever it is that you're doing, whether it's career, studying, fitness, whatever, and you drop the ball a little bit. You don't know when deadlines are, you're not following a plan, everything's all a little bit haphazard, and then suddenly it gets to a point where you actually can't just keep playing it by ear and seeing how it goes and not grabbing the bull by the horns and being organized, and suddenly you're left playing catch up. This takes up a huge amount of your energy and you're able to sustain it for a couple of weeks before finally you feel burnt out. The most neglected way to maintain a work-life balance is proper organisation. I found this recently because I agreed to do a half marathon with one of my friends from medical school, put off training for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks until it got to the point where I realised if I don't start training now, I literally won't be able to run it. And I crammed a huge amount of training into a shorter time span, and it put so much pressure on my energy that basically every single day I was saying how thin I felt like I was spreading myself. Whereas if I'd just been organised and got started earlier, I never would have felt like I was sliding down a slope towards burnout, and life would have been a lot less stressful. I do have a full video on how I manage my time, which I will link here, but in short, I use 3 colour-coded Google calendars. One for my personal life, one for work as in work, not social media work, and then a third one for social media work. Having them color-coded means that I can really easily see when deadlines are, when work things are, when social media things are, and I also have them on a widget on my home screen on my phone, so every single day I see what I have ahead of me and nothing gets missed. As an ADHD girly, obviously I'm all too familiar with being last minute with things, and it is something I have to work really hard on, but I would say I'm getting to the age now where I've been burnt a few too many times that maybe I'm finally starting to learn my lesson. Finally, the last reason that I often find myself getting burnt out is the pressure that I put myself under, the guilt I feel when I'm not doing something productive. And there are a couple things that I've really had to remind myself of over the past few months. Number 1, sometimes rest is the most productive thing that you can do. Number 2, success is subjective. For me, what's really important to me is being happy and fulfilled, and a sense of my happiness and fulfillment does come from feeling like I have a purpose in my job, but also feeling like I'm making the most of life. And number 3, probably the most important one that I've definitely learned the hard way in my first 7 months of being a doctor, and that is that life is too short. The mental pressure that we put on ourselves can sometimes be equally, if not more, exhausting than actually doing the stuff. You might be sitting on the sofa scrolling on your phone, but the guilt that you feel by scrolling on your phone may be just as exhausting as if you were to sit down and just do some work. It's okay to not constantly be productive. It's okay to not have goals all the time. It's okay to not be taking active steps to work towards those goals. It's okay if some of your positive habits slip. Don't use up valuable mental energy on beating yourself up and putting pressure on yourself when ultimately life should be enjoyed, because you actually never know. Being in a hospital, a lot of the time you see how precious health and life are, and they shouldn't be spent worrying about things that won't matter when you're on your deathbed. I'm going to link my people pleasing video here because I do think that it ties in really nicely with this one and will also be quite helpful, and I'm going to link a vlog here if you wanted to see a little bit more of what my life is like on a day-to-day basis. If you enjoyed the video, please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. I hope you have have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful week, and I will see you in the next video.